townsquaremedia.com. Click on Careers. Town Square Media is an equal opportunity employer.
A Town Square Media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got 'em!
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher.
My personality is I want to win badly. I want to win more Lombardis for Philadelphia and our fans. We got the greatest fans around, and I will do everything possible.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
All right, time for Football at 4. It's powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and is brought to you this hour by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. Geoff Mosher's here from the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. You'll get a freshie of the Inside the Birds podcast with plenty to talk about, Geoff, as the Eagles OTAs. A lot of interesting little nuggets coming out from that. I know that Jalen Reagor spoke yesterday, and something that you tweeted out that kind of caught my attention is that, Reagor kind of insinuating anyway that you might see him play more in the slot this year than you did last year. I think he was in the slot about 20% of the time last year, but we might see more of that from him this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're going to see a wide variety of formations and personnel groupings with this coaching staff. Now that's not uncommon. And if you flash back to this time last year, Mike, I kind of had a report about how the Eagles planned to use Jalen Reagor last year at this time. And part of that was they knew he was explosive, knew he had very good run after the catch ability, and wanted to be able to put him in the slot. You remember Doug said they were going to start him off at Z. I knew that eventually he was going to move to the X because Deshaun Jackson always plays the Z, right? But I also knew they were going to try to put him in the slot to capitalize on that burst that he has when he ball's in his hands across the middle. As we know, Deshaun Jackson got hurt. Alshon Jeffrey, it took him forever to come back. Travis Fulgham blossomed a little there at the X. So you wound up seeing Jalen, who also got hurt, kind of playing different spots. This year, the way I understand it, they want to be very matchup based, which is what you hear from coaches. There are going to be certain teams that play certain looks, and you're going to want to see Jalen on the outside to take advantage of it. There are going to be certain teams that play looks that you'll want a player like Jalen on the inside. There'll be times in a game, Mike, where Jalen will alternate from inside to outside. And obviously with Devontae Smith and how successful he can be, I'm sure you're going to see things that involve scissors routes or mesh routes to take advantage of both of those guys on the same side, creating mismatches for the defense. So I don't want to make too much of it because I've seen the joke that, well, gee, I thought they drafted this kid over Justin Jefferson because they thought Justin Jefferson could only play the slot. And there were some people who felt that way. But that's not necessarily what's going on here. This is not like a Nelson Aguilar thing where, okay, we know he can't play the outside. He's better in the slot. I think he's definitely going to be moved around a lot.
That's interesting because you said something that kind of raised my attention here, though. Like, how much did the injuries to other guys affect the development of some of the younger players on this team?
Oh, the injuries to the younger guys, the injuries to the players themselves, like Jalen, Reagor. I mean, he got hurt in training camp on a hustle play, by the way. He gets criticized a lot, but he was hustling to make a tackle on an interception, if you remember. And that's how he hurt his shoulder, elbow area. Shoulder. And then he came back, and then, pretty early in his comeback is when he caught that pass over the middle. I think it was against the Bengals. And he broke his finger and needed that to be repaired. So that cost him 6-7 weeks. And then there was the OTAs in training camp were totally different last year, and much like they're a little bit different this year too. So I feel like most of first-year players last year were behind the eight ball. But then when you get injured in that manner, it of course affects your development.
Greg Ward spoke today, and he was kind of asked about what he sees his role being. I don't know that he gave a really good answer, but I would imagine if Jalen Reagor's getting a lot of slot time, what does that mean for him?
Well, it all depends. I mean, we can sit here and, again, just like last year, talk about theoretically where guys fit best and where you want them. But then the injuries come, then the poor play from anybody could come. Travis Fulgham was great for 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden he disappeared. So I think Greg Ward, it's always going to be uphill for him, right? Because he's the type of player who's good at what he does, but because he's limited as an explosive player, you're always going to want to upgrade from him. And this year, the Eagles have got Jalen Reagor back and healthy. They've got Devontae Smith, and they have some other players who have some explosion and might be able to play the slot as well. I think it's going to be a fight because he's that reliable, and he's one of the quote-unquote leaders of the wide receiver group. So, I would handicap him most likely to make the team, definitely. But as you're asking, what's his role going to be? That's going to be situational, as it has been. And there are going to be times where you would normally think he'd be on the field because they have a slot receiver out there, but he may not be the slot receiver out there.
Yeah, that's interesting because, as he even said today, I'm the oldest guy out here, but he acknowledged, hey, but I'm asking the young guys stuff because I'm not a receiver like some of these guys are, so I'm still trying to learn the ropes from some of these guys. I thought that was kind of an interesting moment from him where he's like, well, yeah, I'm just the oldest guy, but I'm still asking these guys what to do.
That's okay, because I'm sure Joe Flacco sometimes will ask him what it's like to play quarterback, right? Because he was a quarterback. Hey, what's it like to be a running quarterback? Can you give me tips on how to do a little read option here, Greg? No, I don't know that goes on, but I think that just shows you, though, Greg Ward is a pretty humble guy. He's a pretty honest and candid guy. For a position that's considered a diva position, I don't think he's at all a diva, even though he has been a quarterback. He's been a great leader for this team and a really good story.
Yeah.
Honestly, one of the few stories over the last 2 or 3 years of really good development at that position.
And something that yesterday Reagor said was, and you can kind of see him glow about the fact that the coaching staff is really, I don't want to say biased towards wide receiver, but that he acknowledged that, man, having these receivers have so much focus on wide receiver, he's like, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Where do you fall, by the way, on Aaron Moorhead's nickname of A-Mo? Is that a violation, do you think?
A-Mo.
It doesn't flow well.
Yeah.
A-Mo doesn't. It's not like A-Rod or KG. I don't know. I also think JG for the defensive coordinator just doesn't have a good flow, like JG. I don't know.
They haven't been here. They haven't been here. Well, Moorhead was here last year, but JG hasn't been here long enough yet.
Yeah, who was it that said Macho Harris had to earn that nickname? Victor Harris had to earn Macho Harris. I think it was it Jim Johnson who once said that? So maybe these guys got
Macho Harris is a great name. That's a good name pool, though. Where's that? Virginia Tech.
Yeah, he didn't play like a Macho Harris at the NFL level. That was the only issue.
No, he did not.
But yeah, we've talked about the whole like kind of wide receiver cocoon here, right? Just like with quarterbacks, Carson's first 2 years where he had DeFilippo, Frank Reich, Doug Peterson. He had that nice little cocoon of quarterbacks to be his mentor and serve tutelage. I mean, I think that you see that with wide receivers because not only was Sirianni a wide receiver, Aaron Moorhead played college and NFL wide receiver, and also Kevin Patullo, who's the pass game specialist. He's kind of Nick Sirianni's right-hand man. He was a wide receiver in high school and college. I think he moved there from quarterback to wide receiver. So 3 guys with experience at that position. We've said it a lot on Inside the Birds. If wide receiver is not developed, if wide receiver play is very poor, you'd almost have to think it's more on the scouting and than it is on the coaching, because this coaching staff really should have no excuse not to develop wide receivers.
Oh, I think that's a great point you bring up, and we've brought it up. Is we indicated that you have Howie Roseman kind of saying, hey, we're excited to see these guys with our new staff. And people taking shots at Roseman that you drafted JJ, you drafted Reagor, and these guys have been bust. And it's almost like him saying, I don't think they've been bust. I just don't think they've been developed. We're about to find out.
Yeah, this is a big year for a lot of those guys, especially the guys who were rookies last year, not just Reagor, but Watkins, Hightower, just that whole group, because the big theme right now is the Eagles really don't have a veteran wide receiver. And they had 2 veterans last year. Neither of them were healthy. And I'm not quite sure either of them were really regarded as locker room leaders when I'm talking about Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey, right? And so they now start over blank slate with a lot of young guys, first year, second year, or in Greg Ward's case, 5th, but technically really just 2nd full year. And there's not a whole lot of guys there who can take somebody under their wing. So what this coaching staff has to do is be that father figure for these wide receivers in a sense. And these wide receivers, Mike, have to mature, have to grow up, have to be 100% committed to football every single second of the day, like the best of the best are, so that they can reach their fullest potentials.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. I want to ask you about a little bit of defense here. A lot of the defensive guys were kind of speaking today, one of which is Rodney McLeod. And I guess he's kind of an unknown. He had the ACL, and we're just assuming, hey, it's going to be him and Anthony Harris back there at safety. Because if it's not Rodney McLeod, they don't have a lot of – that's another position where they don't have a whole heck of a lot of depth. It would seem they have, though, 2 suitable starters, unlike the corner spot. But where is McLeod at this stage, and where does he see himself by kickoff?
Yeah, Rodney had kind of, I don't want to call him mixed messages when he spoke today, but he said that he's doing well and he's 100% confident in his abilities and the way he's working to be able to be back by week 1. But he also said, that that's a medical decision. You just never know. So he made it sound like it's more of a mentality than anything. He just wants to be, his mentality is if I do everything I'm supposed to do, I'll be ready by week 1. Obviously, the human body sometimes doesn't agree with the mind. So we'll have to hope and the Eagles will really hope that he can be ready for week 1, because like you said, if he's not ready, I don't know who's the next starter. I don't know if it's Kevon Wallace. I don't know if it's probably a rotation. Last year, Marcus Epps is a guy that earned some playing time early because they really were impressed with him, but then he went on the COVID list for quite a while. So he's got to kind of endear himself to the new staff. Avonte Maddox is a guy who, played well as a rookie when put in that free safety spot when McLeod got hurt 2 years ago. In fact, you can argue that the best Avonte Maddox has played as an Eagle has been at that free safety spot. And maybe if Josiah Scott winds up being a real nice, pleasant surprise, who's a better slot receiver, then you start to think about Avonte Maddox back to safety. I don't know. I'm spitballing, but you're right. Yeah. If McLeod can't play, it opens the door for any number of possibilities.
Well, it's sad that you have Avonte Maddox almost playing 3 spots, and you're like, my God. I mean, if he has – because at this point, wouldn't you almost say he has to be the outside corner?
Well, I guess that depends on how well Zach McPherson can endear himself as a rookie 4th-round pick. I mean, if you're a coaching staff, you're a little bit biased because that's your guy, that you put more work into McPherson, into scouting, and
right.
You're probably – going to exaggerate the good things that you see from him in camp and convince yourself that maybe he can start on the outside and is best for it. Or you just go the conservative route and say, look, we're going to play a lot of cover 2, so we're going to protect these corners anyway, and we'll put Avonte out there and give him a shot to see what he can do in our scheme.
Right, exactly. So and then you have, all right, because he started there last year, you might say, all right, let's give him, if we don't bring anybody else in, let's give him the first shot at it. And if he doesn't play there, then maybe he goes to the slot. But if he's not, then it's like, well, we don't have a safety. We're going to have to move him there. I mean, that goes right back to how are they going to fix this corner issue?
I don't know. This is why, I believe everybody's entitled to their opinion. But like when we get people, Mike, saying like, I think this team's going to be way better than people think. I see 10 or 11 wins. The division's not that good. But then you micro-examine some of the weaknesses on the team and you realize that they don't even have a starting cornerback opposite Darius Slay that you can depend on, or a safety right now next to Anthony Harris that will start. I have to say, like, let's look at this realistically too. They've got some real deficiencies in some areas.
McLeod did say that he has all intentions of being ready for week 1, correct?
He said yes, but he went on, if you really listen to what he said that's his mindset. That's what he's taking into it. So he almost made it seem like that's my mindset. Now, what the medical staff says may be different, but that's my mindset. He said that's what I have to say to myself to go forward and know that I can do this,
Right. Yeah, and and Anthony Harris, who also spoke today, it was funny. I guess somebody was trying to get him to talk about the scheme a little bit.
Les Bowen gave it the best try that you could give. I mean, he asked a question and a follow. He might as well have asked Anthony Harris, what's today? And Anthony Harris's answer might as well have been, I really like, vanilla ice cream, because the question and the answer were not consistent there. Les was asking, is this scheme going to look a lot like Minnesota's based on what you've seen so far? And Anthony's answer was like, well, every coach has a scheme and they borrow from everybody and it looks this way and it can look, and you have to be a good player in it. So he really gave no tells on that.
You guys had over at Inside the Birds the latest edition of Q&A with Quentin, Michael, and Jason Avant. What do those guys think about, this talk about Julio Jones? We talked about it Monday. And obviously, anytime there's a big player available, the Eagles are always attached because of Roseman and the calls he'll make. Doesn't mean that they're even interested or not, but it seems that they're always kind of attached. But I'm interested to see what Avant – did he think that getting Julio Jones made sense for this team?
He did feel like it would make sense, basically because I think his point, like many others, is who wouldn't want Julio Jones? He's a great player. He acknowledged the injury last year that limited Julio to, I think, 10 games or 10 starts and has, the foot that's given him problems in the past. But he also felt that he said he thinks Julio has 4 good years left before you'd start to see decline, because he just has off the charts. Like, he's a tall, big guy who runs routes like a small little guy. When you have a tower who can kind of route you up with the footwork like a Golden Tate can do, as a little guy, that's really special. And obviously he'd be a great addition to the team because he's talented, but he also could then show Reagor, Devontae, and all the others what it's like to compete every single day.
Well, that would be interesting. Like, if you had Devontae, Julio Jones, and Reagor, if they're, I don't want to say planning on playing him in the slot, but if they're comfortable with that, and those 3 guys were out there, that's an interesting situation.
Yeah.
Like, that's an interesting
Now you're Greg Ward, and you're like, can I start taking snaps at quarterback?
Hey, I want to get your I was looking over at now Pro Football Focus has been putting their rankings out for every single position. We'll probably dive into these a little deeper, but the running back one I thought was interesting that came out. They have Miles Sanders as the 19th guy in the league, but he was last in the NFC East. I thought that was kind of interesting. They had Saquon Barkley, Zeke Elliott, and Antonio Gibson ahead of him. And that's interesting because Sanders was then 19th overall, but last in the NFC East. And it's funny because Gibson went to Memphis, and there's a lot of people, and I think you guys talked to the Memphis coach down there about Gainwell. There's a lot of people that like Gainwell more than they like Gibson, and yet they have Gibson ahead of Sanders.
Well, I mean, I haven't heard that. I don't know how you can't like Gibson's potential at 230 pounds, running a 4.38, who played mostly wide receiver at Memphis and then wound up being what I thought was a pretty good, not just outside the tackles, but also between the tackles runner for Washington last year. I mean, I don't remember his final stats. I think he went over 1,000 total yards, but by the end of the year, last 4 or 5 games, Antonio Gibson looked like a really special dual threat running back with great speed, good power, good eye vision. So I'm not surprised that, based on just what you saw from him as a rookie, knowing he hasn't even played that position that long, that people would have him ranked fairly high because the sky is the limit for him. Gainwell's different, right? He's not 230 pounds. He's 200. But what he probably does even better than Antonio is just run wide receiver routes. Antonio could do that too, and he did at Memphis, and he caught a lot of balls. Again, he was a slot receiver there. But Gainwell is almost built to just double move you and run wide receiver patterns, almost like Brian Westbrook would do. But the thing about Gainwell is, and even the Memphis coach Ryan Silverfield admitted it with us, by not playing last year, opting out, he didn't have the opportunity to work on his pass protection. He didn't have the opportunity to work on being a between the tackles runner. Those aren't his strengths, which is why he was a 5th-round pick. If he had gone back to college and played, he probably would have been and had a good year, 2nd or 3rd rounder. So there is good potential for him, but I think this is going to be a year for Gainwell, Mike, where he's learning a lot of intricacies of the job and then out there doing what he does best in situations, which is catching the ball.
Yeah, it's like you have Miles Sanders, who, everybody kind of looks at as this maybe like this every down type of back. And I know he didn't catch the ball that well last year, but his rookie year he caught the ball better. Then they brought Kerryon Johnson in. You have Jordan Howard here. You got Boston Scott. We've talked a lot about the receivers this week because of the nature of where they were drafted. But the running back room is going to be quite interesting.
It is. It's one of the competitions we've talked about. This year, camp is going to be fun because there's competition, maybe not for starting jobs, but as we mentioned, the number 3 safety, the number 2 corner, the slot corner, 3rd and 4th. Well, not 3rd and 4th D end. That's pretty much settled now. But the D tackle spot. Can Milton Williams be the number 3 D tackle?
And Javon Hargrave thinks so.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a big fan. And then, of course, running back. I mean, yeah, Miles Sanders is going to make the team, but what's it going to look like after Miles Sanders, who's been hurt? He was hurt last year. I think even his rookie year, he had some hamstring issues in camp. So you always got to wonder who those second and third guys are going to be.
All right, more football at 4 tomorrow. Adam Kaplan is here. And, of course, he, like all guests, Geoff Mosher today, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Don't forget the new Inside the Birds podcast. It drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., wherever you get your podcast. Check that out, and then check in on football at 4 tomorrow right here on the Sports Bash. All right, Moshe, take care, man.
Mike, talk to you, man. Have a good Memorial Day weekend.
You do the same. Moshe will be back. Actually, we're off Monday, so he will not be here on Monday, but we'll figure that out. Maybe we'll pop him on Tuesday or something like that here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.